Go outside tonight, find somewhere dark, away from the city, away from the street lights, and look up. What you see is essentially the same sky that every human being who've ever lived has seen. The same stars, the same patterns, the same Milky Way spreading across the dark like a river of light. But for most of human history, for hundreds of thousands of years, nobody knew what any of it was. No telescopes, no science, no physics, just the sky and a brain intelligent enough to know it was looking at something important. So what did they think it was? The answers are more beautiful, more strange, and more consistent across the world than almost anything else in human history. Because from Australia to Egypt to Norway to the Amazon, separated by oceans and thousands of years, ancient humans kept arriving at the same answer. The most widespread belief about stars in the ancient world, appearing independently across cultures that had no contact with each other, was this: the stars were dead. Not metaphorically, not the stars remind us of those who are gone. Ancient peoples across the globe generally believed that the points of light above them were the souls or spirits of their ancestors, continuing to exist in the sky after death. The ancient Egyptians believed that when a pharaoh died, his soul ascended and became a star. Their word for the circumpolar stars, the ones that never set, that spin endlessly around the North Pole without disappearing below the horizon, was the indestructibles. These were the souls that had achieved eternal life. The Norse believed that warriors who had died in battle were taken to Valhalla, and that the stars were their souls, shining in the night as tribute to their bravery. The Aboriginal Australians of the southeastern regions believed that the sky was a world much like their own, and that the good people, after death, were set among the stars by a creator figure, where they existed and continued to exist and observe the living. Indigenous peoples across North America held similar beliefs. The Milky Way itself was known by many groups as the path of souls, the road the dead walked on their journey to the afterlife. What makes this so striking is not just how beautiful the idea is, but how universal it is. Cultures that never met, never traded, never had any contact with each other, all looked at the same sky and reached the same conclusion. The people we love don't disappear, they go up. Of all the stars in the sky, one small cluster appears more often in ancient myth, legend, and ritual than any other. The Pleiades, a group of 7 stars, though the naked eye today typically sees 6, sitting in the constellation Taurus. They are not the brightest stars, they're not the biggest, but something about this cluster captured human imagination across every inhabited continent on Earth. The ancient Greeks called them the 7 sisters, daughters of Titan Atlas placed in the sky by Zeus. The Aboriginal Australians, whose astronomical traditions are among the oldest in the world, possibly stretching back 60,000 years, also called them the 7 sisters, and told stories about their pursuit across the sky by a male figure. Stories that have been identified as describing real stellar movements observed over thousands of years. The ancient Japanese called them Subaru, which is why the car brand has that 6-star logo. The Egyptians tracked them for agricultural timing. Hesiod, the ancient Greek poet, wrote that farmers should begin the harvest when the Pleiades rose at dawn. And the oldest physical star map ever found, a 3,600-year-old bronze disk discovered in Germany called the Nebra Sky Disk, depicts the Pleiades at its most prominent feature, a cluster of 7 golden dots on the background of deep blue-green. Why the Pleiades? Researchers believe it is partly because this cluster functioned as a kind of celestial clock. Its rising and setting marked the seasons for planting and harvest. But something deeper was happening too. A group of stars that looked like a family grouped together in the dark. Perhaps it simply looked something that mattered. Eventually, ancient humans began moving beyond pure myth and towards something that looked more like science. The ancient Greeks, around the 5th and 6th centuries before the Common Era, began asking not just what the stars were spiritually, but where they were physically. And their answer was elegant and almost entirely wrong. They concluded that the sky was a great sphere, a transparent crystalline dome surrounding the Earth. The stars were tiny jewels embedded in the inner surface of this sphere, fixed in place, rotating around the Earth as the sphere turned. Inside this sphere were other spheres, each carrying a different wandering star, what we now call planets. The Greeks called wandering stars because they moved differently from the fixed stars embedded in the outer sphere. This model, known as the geocentric model, placed Earth at the center of everything. The sun moved around us, the moon moved around us, everything existed for us, circling endlessly overhead. It was a deep, satisfying picture of the universe, beautifully, orderly, comprehensible, and it held for nearly 2,000 years. What is remarkable about the Greek model is not that it was wrong, but that it was the first serious attempt to describe the mechanics of sky rather than its meaning. They were asking not what are the stars for, but how does all this work? That question once asked could never be unasked. Here is where it gets genuinely surprising. For a long time, archaeologists assumed that the animal paintings in prehistoric caves were just that, of images of animals, records of hunts, or decorative art. But in 2018, a study from the universities of Edinburgh and Kent found something different. When researchers compared cave paintings from sites in Turkey, Spain, France, and Germany, radiocarbon dated to between 10,000 and 40,000 years ago, with the positions of star constellations at the time those paintings were made, they found something extraordinary. The animals weren't just animals, they were star maps. The animal figures appeared to represent constellations as they would have appeared in the sky at the time of the painting, and were being used as a calendar, a way of recording dates and events, including what researchers believe may be records of comet impacts. Most strikingly, the study found evidence that ancient humans understood the precision of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's rotational axis that causes the star positions to shift gradually over thousands of years. This discovery was previously credited to the ancient Greek astronomer Hipparchus, working in the 2nd century BC. The cave paintings pushed that understanding back by tens of thousands of years. As a lead researcher put it, intellectually, they were hardly any different to us today. They were watching the same sky, tracking the same movements, trying to understand the same thing. They just had no instruments except their eyes, their memory, and the walls of a cave. Today, roughly a third of all people on Earth cannot see the Milky Way from where they live. Light pollution has erased the sky. In most cities, on a clear night, you might see 20 or 30 stars. Ancient humans, on a clear night with no moon, could see several thousand. That is not a small difference. For most of human history, the night sky was the most complex, most reliable, most consistently present thing in a person's world. It rose and set every night with perfect precision. It tracked the seasons. It told you where you were, what time of year it was, what was coming. It was a calendar, a compass, a map, a religion, and a connection to everyone who had ever died. We now know that the stars are not souls. They are not holes in the celestial sphere. They're not jewels embedded in rotating dome. They are distant suns, many of them larger than our own, separated from us by distances so vast that the light we see tonight left its source hundreds or thousands of years ago. Some of the stars you can see right now no longer exist. You are looking at the light from something that died before your great-great-grandparents were born. Ancient humans didn't know that, but they knew that the sky mattered, that it was worth watching, worth recording, worth understanding. They were right about that. What did ancient humans think stars actually were? They thought they were their grandmothers, their fathers, the warriors who died too young. They thought they were gods, calendars, crystal domes, signals from something bigger than themselves. And they sat under them for hundreds of thousands of years, long before writing, long before cities, long before any of this, and looked up and felt exactly what you feel when you do the same thing. Something is up there. It means something. We have more answers now than they did, but we ask the same question. If you want to keep following these questions about what ancient humans knew, thought, and felt, the next video is right here. See you there.